A man is stubborn as a mule. He don't learn half enough in school. The only thing that drives him is his ego.
A woman.
It's mad. It's a good thing.
Napoli, because she missed the...
Rosemary Clooney once had almost everything America of that era admired: a famous voice, hit films, fame, money, and a family that looked perfect from the outside. But right behind that curtain was a chilling truth: her 5 children did not grow up in the light, but among cracks. A marriage marked by constant betrayal and eventual collapse. Mental breakdowns. A home that was a family one day and ruins the next. What happened to those 5 children became a story of survival struggle and unexpected success. One of them would go on to become a star even more famous than their mother. The others almost disappeared from the public spotlight, and their stories might surprise you. And perhaps the youngest child may be the most painful chapter of all. An unstable childhood, from scraping by to a chance at a different life. Born on May 23, 1928 in Maysville, Kentucky, Clooney had a turbulent childhood. Her father, Andrew Clooney, was an alcoholic who was rarely home, while her mother, Frances Guilfoyle, often worked away from home. The 3 Clooney siblings, Rosemary, Betty, and Nikki, lived with various relatives. Then tragedy struck again when her younger brother Andy died in a drowning accident. When Rosemary was 15, her mother left the family for another man, leaving Rosemary and 13-year-old Betty to live with a father who was frequently in and out of jail for public intoxication. The 2 sisters were constantly moved between relatives. Eventually, their father disappeared and never returned, leaving the 2 girls without a single dollar. Not wanting to live forever as a burden on relatives, Rosemary and Betty began looking for ways to earn money. For a long time, Rosemary Clooney and Betty performed together as a sister duo. Their work on the radio opened doors to other opportunities, such as performing at schools, appearing on local television, and singing with a local band leader. When the 2 sisters auditioned to sing with Tony Pastor, a nationally known band leader, it seemed like they had truly made it. However, before the Clooney sisters could begin this new career, they faced an obstacle. Both were underage and needed a guardian. In the end, their uncle George Guilfoyle agreed. Within a year, Clooney wrote, "We went from knee-sock schoolgirls to nylon-stocking big band singers with contracts. It was almost beyond belief, an overwhelming stroke of luck." Over the next 3 years, Clooney and her sister traveled across America with Pastor's band, performing every night, riding buses and sleeping whenever they could. They performed at nightclubs, fair schools, and parks, and each sister earned $125 a week, minus hotel costs, meals, and expenses for Uncle George. The pace was exhausting, but leading a big band trained Rosemary Clooney in diction, delivery, and volume. After 3 years, Betty grew tired of the constant traveling life and wanted to leave show business and return home. However, Rosemary, who was considered to have the stronger voice, was offered a solo contract with Columbia Records. Betty went home while Rosemary began her path toward fame. Sadly, Betty Clooney died quite early. In 1976, at the age of 45, Rosemary's beloved sister and performing partner passed away from a brain aneurysm. This loss was a major shock to Rosemary. The song that brought Rosemary Clooney to the height of fame in 1951, "Come On to My House," was not a song she loved. When it was given to her, she was asked to sing it with an accent, and she hated it. She thought it was silly, corny, and disliked the idea of putting on a fake accent. In her memoirs and interviews, Clooney often talked about how much she hated this song. "When you are young, you can get arrogant. Right, I took myself too seriously back then." Columbia Records even threatened to fire Clooney if she did not perform the song, so she reluctantly agreed. But she only accepted if she could use an Italian accent, because, as she said, "That was the only accent I knew, no matter how much she disliked it." Come On to My House became a massive hit, and Clooney's first royalty check reached $130,000. Although she was a talented singer and actress, Rosemary Clooney was not a strong dancer. This became a problem when she was cast alongside Bing Crosby in the musical film White Christmas. The two were the lead pair with excellent vocal chemistry, but the director had to work around Clooney's weakness in dancing. Ironically, her co-star Vera Ellen was an excellent dancer, but not a strong singer. To solve this, Clooney was only given 2 short dance segments with the simplest moves, while Vera Ellen's singing was dubbed by a singer named Trudy Stevens. If they could have dubbed My Dancing too, we would have had a perfect film. After that, Rosemary Clooney became more sought after for musical film roles, so she felt the need to improve her dancing and began training with professional dancer Dante DiPaolo. During that time, they fell deeply in love and dated for a while, but their busy schedules pulled them apart. While DiPaolo was away filming, Clooney met actor Jose Ferrer. Entering Hollywood high society, Clooney married actor Jose Ferrer. When they began their relationship, Ferrer was actually still married to Phyllis Hill. After his divorce was finalized, he quickly married Clooney. Clooney moved to Beverly Hills. The couple had their first child, Miguel Jose Ferrer, on February 7, 1955, and would have 4 more children by 1960. In Beverly Hills, Clooney immersed herself in the Hollywood lifestyle, socializing with stars like Marlene Dietrich and Bing Crosby and attending lavish parties. She returned to work at the Sands in Las Vegas, earning $20,000 a week just 6 weeks after giving birth, and soon signed a contract for 39 half-hour episodes of The Rosemary Clooney Show. During this time, she also recorded duets with her husband, Man Uh-Huh and Woman Uh-Huh, and with Dietrich, Dot's Nice Donna Fight. It all seemed like a marriage that had reached the peak of happiness, a powerful and famous family, a luxurious mansion. But that was only half the truth the world was allowed to see. Ferrer had issues with fidelity even before the marriage, and he continued that way throughout his life. She once overheard him on the phone bragging to a friend about a recent affair, and confronting him did not seem to change anything. They divorced in 1961. They later remarried, but when Clooney discovered Ferrer had not changed and continued his affairs, she filed for a final divorce in 1967. During their first separation, Rosemary Clooney had an affair with composer and bandleader Nelson Riddle. The relationship was intense but deeply unstable. Clooney was very serious about Riddle, even though, like her, he was still legally married and had children. At one point, Clooney and Riddle even lived together in a house arranged by his secretary. But the relationship was not built to last. By the early 1960s, Rosemary Clooney was carrying too much at once. She had a demanding career, 5 children at home, and a husband who was never faithful. The pressure kept building, and to cope, Clooney began using prescription drugs and barbiturates. She also turned to alcohol just like her father before her, and it did not take long for her to become truly addicted, severely affecting her career. Because of alcohol and drug dependence, Clooney's behavior became erratic and paranoid. She was quickly labeled unreliable at work and struggled to find opportunities. During these years, her singing career declined sharply as her voice began to suffer. And not just her children were deeply affected as well. Miguel Ferrer, the most successful child. Miguel Ferrer was born in 1955, at exactly the time when Rosemary Clooney was still a major name in American music, and Jose Ferrer was already a respected figure on stage and in film. That means, from the moment he was born, Miguel did not enter an ordinary household. He grew up surrounded by fame, but also inside a marriage full of cracks, where his parents' glamour did not mean peace at home. When he was young, Miguel did not go straight into acting. He first leaned toward music, played drums, and appeared on Keith Moon's album, 2 Sides of the Moon. Only later did he study acting at the Beverly Hills Playhouse and begin taking small steps on television in the early 1980s. His first role was even tied to his father. He played the younger version of the character Jose Ferrer portrayed in Magnum P.I. Right there, one thing was already very clear. Miguel could never enter the business as an unknown. The door opened, but behind that door, his family name was already standing there, waiting. The big turning point came in 1987 with RoboCop. The role of Bob Morton truly launched Miguel. After that, he kept building his name through Twin Peaks Crossing Jordan NCIS Los Angeles and films like Traffic and Iron Man 3. He was not the kind of glamorous star in the classic mold of his mother. He took a different path, rougher, sharper, colder, and very much his own. That was how Miguel escaped the shadow of Rosemary Clooney and Jose Ferrer, not by denying them, but by creating a screen presence that could not be mistaken for anyone else. But Miguel's life was not as long as the career he built. Even though he kept working, he died in 2017 from complications of throat cancer at the age of 61. Looking back, Miguel was probably Rosemary's most successful child. But he was also the clearest example of this truth in families like that success does not begin from a normal starting line. It begins with having to live your whole life beneath a shadow big enough to swallow your name, and then slowly taking that name back from the shadow itself. Maria Ferrer and Monsita Ferrer, the child who never fully appeared. Maria Ferrer was born on August 9, 1956, at a time when Rosemary Clooney was still a very big name, but her marriage to Jose Ferrer had already begun to show cracks that could no longer be hidden. That means Maria did not grow up in an unknown family trying to rise. She grew up in a house that already had lights, already had fame, and already had silent damage. Unlike Miguel, Maria did not take a path that made the public remember her face and name as an actress or screen figure. She grew up and gradually moved into a different orbit, quieter and more private, as if she understood from the beginning that in a family like that, not everyone wants to live forever in front of a camera. Later on, the name Maria Ferrer Murdoch appeared, more often showing that her life moved into a completely different space from Hollywood, where the light was still there, but no longer the light of the stage. In 1997, the press noted that she and David Murdoch bought a 50-acre ranch in Santa Ynez. One detail like that is enough to suggest an entire life direction. Maria did not throw herself into the race for fame. She moved into a life of wealth and status, but stayed far from the loud kind of public presence her parents once lived inside. Many years later, when Maria did appear in public, she mostly appeared as someone preserving the memory of her mother. By 2025, she was invited to speak and tell the story of Rosemary Clooney, as if in the end, the public still came back to see her through the doorway of family. That is exactly where Maria's sadness lives. She did not have a loud downfall, a major scandal, or a shattered period that outsiders could whisper about. But because of that, she almost lived her entire life in the quiet section, only mentioned when someone wanted to better understand Rosemary Clooney. Then there is Monsita Ferrer, born on October 13, 1958, in Hollywood, California, right in the center of the entertainment world. Yet her public life became dimmer than almost everyone else's. She did touch the arts and was known for Mother's Day in 1989, which means she was not entirely outside of it. But that contact never turned into a major career. Monsita stepped lightly into the light and then stepped back out, letting her name slowly sink beneath the weight of the much larger names in her family. She married Terry Botwick in 1978 and had 3 children, which means her life did continue, remained full, and formed its own family. She did not disappear in the literal sense, but in the public eye, that presence was far too thin. In 2002, after Rosemary died, Monsita and her siblings helped organize a memorial fundraiser for the Lung Research Foundation, named after their mother. That detail matters because it shows she was still there, still carrying part of the family responsibility, still a real part of this story. It is just that history almost never stopped long enough to tell her story. For Monsita, the tragedy was not a dramatic fall from the top. The tragedy was spending a lifetime inside that very family, yet remaining hidden behind the size of the names around her. And if Maria could at least step into a life of her own, Monsita feels more like a daughter history pushed to the edge almost from the beginning. So when you look at these two daughters, the saddest part is not scandal or collapse, but a very quiet truth. Some children of famous people are not destroyed by disgrace. They simply spend their whole lives in the dimmer corner of the family story. Rafael Ferrer, the child who grew up among the ruins. Rafael Ferrer was born on March 23, 1960. The youngest son of Rosemary Clooney and Jose Ferrer, and perhaps also the child who entered the clearest stage of this family's collapse. When Rafael was born, his parents already had 5 children in just a few short years, and the marriage had already begun moving into a stage where it could no longer stay the way it was. Just 1 year later, Rosemary and Jose had their first divorce in 1961. They remarried in 1964, then broke apart again in 1967. That means Rafael's earliest childhood almost passed inside a house where the structure of family was always changing there one day and different the next. What made it heavier was that those upheavals did not stop on divorce papers. The 1960s were the years Rosemary declined badly in mental health. Recent sources still describe that period as a time when she struggled with mental illness and drug dependence. For a child like Rafael, what hurt most was probably not one particular argument, but the feeling that his home could slip out of place at any moment. Rafael grew up and did not choose the path of a loud star. He worked in voice acting for nearly 30 years, becoming a familiar voice in the entertainment business, a way of living completely different from the noise of his parents' lives. Seen that way, Rafael did not collapse in public, but his story still carries a very clear sadness. He grew up in a famous family where love was real, but almost always came with instability. Gabriel Ferrer, the last child. Gabriel Ferrer was born on August 1, 1957, when the marriage between Rosemary Clooney and Jose Ferrer was still intact on paper, but already beginning to shake inside. That means Gabriel did not grow up under an unknown roof, struggling to rise. He grew up in a family that already had fame, already had lights, but whose emotional foundation was never steady. From very early on, he lived in an atmosphere where fame and instability came together. Unlike Miguel Gabriel, did not follow the path of becoming a major film star. He did touch acting, and he was connected to the arts, but his public life is not remembered through famous screen roles. The clearest turning point came in 1979 when Gabriel married Debbie Boone. That marriage lasted for decades, completely different from the cycle of collapse that hung over his parents' lives. The two built a family, had 4 children, and Gabriel gradually came to look like the one who chose a steadier life instead of a louder one. He and Debbie Boone took part in children's book projects and family-centered creative work, a very different direction from the harsh spotlight Rosemary and Jose once lived under. This contrast is exactly what matters. While his parents left behind a story filled with betrayal, divorce, remarriage, and then more collapse, Gabriel seems to have chosen to live in the opposite direction, quieter, calmer, steadier. But that does not mean he escaped the family shadow. He was the son of Rosemary Clooney, and Jose Ferrer then entered another famous family when he married Debbie Boone. So, even while living a more stable life, Gabriel was still rarely seen as a person completely separate from the large names surrounding his life. Her final years of illness. After all those years of decline through pills, alcohol, and mental crisis, Rosemary Clooney did not disappear the way many people assumed she would. She came back slowly, quietly. There was no big Hollywood comeback with trumpets and fanfare. But that is exactly why the final chapter of her life is worth talking about. It was not one last flash of light, it was a return with depth, the point where people finally saw her as a real artist, not just the woman who once sang a few famous hits from the 1950s. The major turning point came in 1976 when Bing Crosby invited her to join his 50th anniversary tour. That invitation did not just give Rosemary a stage, it gave her a place again. It reminded the public that this voice was still there, still powerful, still full of soul, and most importantly, still worth hearing. From that point on, Rosemary did not run after the kind of return to the top the press likes to write about. She took the smarter road, she sang live, she recorded steadily. She gradually moved into American standards albums with a jazz and traditional pop sound, where age did not weaken her voice but made it richer. With Concord, Rosemary entered a very different phase. She was no longer the young singer tied so tightly to "Come On to My House." No longer the bright, catchy image people remembered easily, then dismissed just as easily. In this phase, she sang like someone who had lived long enough to understand the songs she was singing. And that was when critics began giving her a deeper kind of respect. Her final album, Sentimental Journey, even received a Grammy nomination in the traditional pop category, a small detail, but a very valuable one, because it showed that even at the end of her life, she was not just a name from the past. She was still being heard in the present. What made Rosemary Clooney's final years special was not that she worked a lot, it was that she worked from a different place. When she was young, she became famous too fast and became famous for things even she did not truly love. But in old age, Rosemary seems to have finally won back the right to define herself. She appeared at Carnegie Hall in the 1990s. She kept performing, kept recording, kept being invited back onto television. In 1995, she received an Emmy nomination for a guest role on ER. That was not a cute nostalgia gesture for an old star. It was proof that even at an older age, Rosemary still had enough strength to step into a top television series and leave a mark strong enough for the industry to recognize. Then came the most beautiful and painful part of all. In 2002, Rosemary Clooney was awarded the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. It was the moment the music industry officially said something very late, but very clearly she was not just someone who had once been famous. She was a legacy, a voice with its own place in American music, an artist who had moved through pop hits, through film, through collapse, through rebirth, and still carried enough weight to be honored at the Lifetime level. But just as that recognition arrived, her body could no longer wait for it. In late 2001, Rosemary was diagnosed with lung cancer. She had been a heavy smoker for many years, and the final price had finally come due. In January 2002, she underwent lung cancer surgery. Reports said that surgery itself kept her from being able to attend the Grammy ceremony in person to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award. That detail is incredibly powerful for a script because it contains the full tragedy of the final chapter. Rosemary was finally given what she deserved but no longer had the strength to walk onto the stage and receive it herself. The glory still came. It just came later than her health did. Rosemary Clooney died on June 29, 2002, at her home in Beverly Hills at the age of 74. The legacy of a legend. So after all those fractures, what does the world still remember Rosemary Clooney for? Not just because she was once a star. Hollywood has had many stars. America has had many voices that rose and then faded. But Rosemary was the kind of person whose voice revealed more as the years passed. When she was young, people remembered her as the singer with the bright smile, the hits all over the radio, the face gentle enough to stand beside Bing Crosby in White Christmas and make audiences believe in a beautiful holiday season. Back then, Rosemary seemed like part of a brighter, softer America, a place where everything still felt intact. But her life did not go in that direction. Her marriage broke apart. Her mind collapsed. Pills crisis years that seemed to drift away from the spotlight. And it was exactly from that place that Rosemary Clooney became even more memorable. Because she did not come back as someone trying to hold on to old glory. She came back as a woman life had wounded, so when she sang it, no longer held only technique, or fame. It held loss. It held experience. It held the feeling of someone who understood very clearly what life can take from your hands. Maybe that is why later on, people no longer remembered Rosemary only as the star of Come On to My House or White Christmas. They remembered her as a voice that survived, a woman who had lived through her best years, her worst years, and still kept her dignity in music. That is not something every famous person can do. And even today, Rosemary Clooney remains in exactly the way real artists do. In the old songs, people still play again. In the Christmas seasons, when White Christmas returns like a habit of American memory. In stories of family injury, the falls and recoveries that make people look at her and realize that sometimes what remains in the end is not glory, it is endurance. Rosemary Clooney is not remembered only because she once shined. She is remembered because after the light dimmed, she still had something else. A voice warm enough to carry the sadness of many generations.
This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Thoughtfully compiled from public archives, historical records, and classic articles. While we strive for accuracy and balanced storytelling, some details from Hollywood's golden age remain unconfirmed and should be treated as speculative. We encourage viewers to draw their own independent conclusions. If this journey through Hollywood's shadows resonated with you, please leave a gentle like and subscribe with the bell icon so you never miss our next chapter. To continue uncovering the forgotten tragedies of the Golden Age, simply select the video on your screen right now. Thank you for keeping their memories alive.